Love's not a spiritual force moving through reality. Love is reality. Love is the one breath. And everything in me moves me towards a union, moves me towards embrace, but not an embrace in which I disappear, but my friends, an embrace in which I appear. Let's resonate the code and let's love it open, my friends, like we never have before. David.
So here's this week's evolutionary love code. And maybe someone can put it in the chat box for me. Reality is lined with love. The inside of reality is love intelligence. This is not ordinary love, what is usually referred to as love. It's rather what we call outrageous love or evolutionary love. Ordinary love is the exile of love to merely a human experience. That experience is often a strategy of the ego for security or status. Ordinary love is generally a passing emotional state and is most often the emotion of infatuation. It's what Dante called love that moves the sun and other stars. When human love participates in the larger quality of outrageous love, it's no longer merely a passing human emotion. Rather, it becomes the center of gravity of your life. You are lived as love, a radically alive, joy-filled, and purpose-driven life. When you awaken as evolutionary love, you realize your identity as an evolutionary lover. When you awaken as outrageous love, you realize your identity as an outrageous lover. You deepen your identity from I am evolution to I am evolutionary love. I am an evolutionary lover. I am an outrageous lover. Now resonate it one more time. Reality is lined with love. The inside of reality is love intelligence. This is not ordinary love, what's usually referred to as love. It's rather what we call outrageous love or evolutionary love. Ordinary love is the exile of love to merely a human experience. That experience is often a strategy of the ego for security or status. Ordinary love is generally a passing emotional state and most often the state of infatuation. It's what, when now we're talking about the outrageous love, is what Dante called the love that moves the sun and other stars. When human love participates in the larger quality of outrageous love, it's no longer merely a passing emotion. Rather, it becomes the center of gravity of your life. You are lived as love, radically alive, a joy-filled and purpose-driven life. When you awaken as evolutionary love, you realize your identity as an outrageous and evolutionary lover. When you awaken as outrageous love, you realize your identity as an outrageous lover. You deepen your identity from I am evolution to I am evolutionary love. I am an evolutionary lover. I am an outrageous lover. And with that, I pass my word back to you, beloved Dr. Marc.
David, gorgeous, gorgeous, everyone. David is gorgeous and the code is gorgeous because David has lived as love. Right? This code is an unbelievable code, right? This code is the code that changes everything. It's the code that recodes reality. So we're about to begin probably about 3 weeks where we're going to dive into and reanimate, right, this revolution, because at the very heart of the revolution is Eros, a politics of Eros, an economics of Eros, relationships of Eros, a response to the meta crisis as we're poised between utopia and dystopia that comes from the heart of Eros. And we have to begin with, and we talked about this several weeks ago, and let's step in from there. We have to begin with this realization in response to the tragic challenge that a confused modernity and postmodernity has made to the very simple question, is love real? And we saw a few weeks ago, a response from Chat GPT-3, which of course said, well, no, love's an emotion. People have different understandings of what it is. It can affect your life, but love is real, meaning love is an ontology, meaning love is constitutive of cosmos. Cosmos is constituted all the way up and all the way down. Every moment is constituted by Eros, is constituted by love. How many people have a sense of what I mean when we say that? It's constituted by love, meaning love is the core. Eros is the primary value of reality. It's the primary first principle and value of reality. And we don't use the word love because love often connotes something which is smaller, what we might call ordinary love, what we might call love, which is a strategy of the ego, love, which is a social construction, the kind of love that's described by postmodernists. For example, my dear friend, who I love dearly, Howard Bloom, in his book, The Lucifer Principle, challenges the word love, I think wrongly. And I've talked to Howard about this, but he's expressing the basic postmodern idea, which is tragic and misguided, which is that love is a social construction, that love is a fiction, right? That love is a figment of our imagination. Not that we don't experience love. We haven't experienced love. We have an emotion of love, but that it's a real constitutive structure of reality, as opposed to an immoral accidental force generated by a random cosmos, which doesn't have intrinsic value. That's the question of the day. We say, I love you. I love you is our sacred creed, but the words have grown tepid and flaccid, right? And limp. They're not throbbing. They're not tumescent. They're not pulsing. We no longer quite understand what we mean when we say, I love you, right? And we too easily love hamburgers, right? And love the weather, right? And what's the relationship between loving hamburgers and loving you? Well, we're not sure, right? We use I love you. We know I love you is our sacred creed. We know that's what matters. When the World Trade Center is going down and people have just a few seconds left, and we collected the phone transcripts, we see that people didn't say the Shema, the great Hebrew lineage prayer, although some people may have, of course, and people didn't say or recite the triple gem of Buddhism, right? Or Om Mani Padme Om, right? And it's when everybody said, people might have said their local religious creed, which is beautiful, but when everybody said, the universal structure, the constitutive element that needed to be present in that moment, people phoned home and people said, I love you. I love you. And I'll always love you. And I'll always love you. Right? And at the end of today, right, Chris said to Haley, at the end of today, let's see if we can find Whitney Houston, right, when she's singing, I will always love you. Right, let's see if we can find that for the end of today. Right? Like, oh my God, that's what the people said. And yet we don't know what I love you means. Right? And yet, we have the voices of postmodernity from Chat GPT-3 to my friend Yuval Harari saying, no, these love stories, they're fictions, they're figments of our imagination, they're social constructions. They're not actually anchored in the real, in ontology, right? In the ultimately real. And so to begin our conversation, friends, around outrageous love. And when you talk about outrageous love, you can't be sick, you can't have a fever, right? Because we're fevered with outrageous love. And the fever of outrageous love, oh my God, purifies all fevers. Okay, so the beginning of the discussion about outrageous love, and we're going to come back to the code right at the end. And Whitney Houston's going to resonate our code for us. And Whitney Houston lived an incredible, tragic, and beautiful love story, and lots of incredible post-tragic moments, right? So to really resonate our code, we need to create some context. What are we saying here? So the first thing we're saying is love is real. Okay? Love is absolutely real. And the second thing we're saying is that this love lives in every moment. Solomon, as in Solomon is the source of the wisdom of Solomon. the wisdom of Solomon, which suffuses both East and West in the lineage traditions. Because remember, friends, it's all one source. And I really want to understand this. All religions come from one source. Whatever we're going to identify that source as, it all comes from one source. It all comes from the one. It comes from the one heart. It comes from the one love. It comes from the one Eros. And there's an entire set of esoteric sources that suggest that Solomon might have been core to that. And maybe there was another deeper, earlier tradition from which all emerged. But all temples are rooted in the one temple. All loves are sourced in the one love. All Eros, all breath is in the one breath. It's one love, it's one heart, it's one breath, it's one temple. And it's real. So Solomon writes, and it's so beautiful, my friends. Solomon writes, Smolo tachat roshi, your left hand is under my head. V'minot techapkeni, and your right hand embraces me. And what Solomon is saying is, wherever you fall into the hands of she. Can you feel that, friends? Can you feel that? Let's find each other in the chat box. Can you feel that? Who can feel that? Wherever you fall into her hands, right? Wherever you fall into her hands, right? That's an ontological reality of cosmos. Chat GPT-3, my dear friend. No, love is real. My dear friend, Yuval, Chaversli, Maxim Shli. Love is real. Right? And the love you feel, Yuval, for Yitzchak, for your awesome, I'm sure, partner, participates not just in a social construction of reality, brother, but in the ontology of cosmos itself. And ontology means it's real. It's ultimately real. It's more real than anything else. And so the actual reality of every moment is Smolo tachat roshi. Your left hand is under my head. V'minot techapkeni, and your right hand embraces me. People talk about searching for love, but trying to find love. And we actually need to realize in the deepest sense that love's never absent. Love's not something which is a mountain that needs to be scaled. Love is not hard to find. Love is impossible to avoid. Does everyone understand that? Love is not hard to find. Love is impossible to avoid. Love is the fundamental quality of every moment. Love is the fundamental quality of this moment. Now, this is critical to understand because this is what we call the great you. Y-O-U, the great you. And I had a wonderful conversation with my dear friend, Ken Wilber, many, many years ago. And out of this set of conversations and conversations with Brother David and Father Thomas, that emerged the notion that we later came to call the three faces of the divine. And these three faces of the divine are fundamental in the structure of reality. In the great lineage of Hebrew wisdom, they're called Ani, I, Ata, you, and then who, him or her. And those are actually first person, second person, and third person. So you think about the third person of reality. The third person of reality is the force of love moving through cosmos. But when you look at third person, you could actually understand the story of reality from its exterior perspective, right? So you see that reality is getting more and more complex. So the movement to more and more complexity, right? The self-organizing universe that structures more and more complexity. Okay. So we can say, okay, that's third person. And science often looks at the third person of reality. But there's a first person of reality, right? And the first person of reality is my experience, what's moving through me. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the second person of reality is what's in the space in between. Okay. And Marjorie, we'll talk a little bit about but what does it mean love's opposite? Okay. So we'll hold that question for a second in the chat box. We'll come back to it. Remind me at the end. Okay. But stay with this, everyone, in kind of center. Stand center. Perfect. Okay. So the second person of reality, and it's the second face of the real. That's what I want to call it. I don't want to call it the three faces of God. I want to call it the three faces of the real. And the three faces of the real, the second face of the real, is this second person Eros, this force that's in every moment bringing us together, uniting us, creating larger unions, creating deeper mutualities, creating more profound recognitions, creating wider and deeper and more intense embraces. And this is what's happening in every second. This is the nature of reality. And to actually become the new human, to become homo amor, is to be fully aware that this force of Eros that moves in third person, meaning it moves through all the structures of reality, moving reality towards ever larger unions or complexities in the language of science, or aggregating ever larger and wider and deeper aggregations. And in this force of love that lives in me in first person, which is the interior quality of my consciousness, and this force of love of Eros that moves between us is my own essential nature. These three faces of the real live in me. I am a unique expression of those qualities of the real that never was, is, or will be ever again other than through me. And as such, I am a new ontology of the real. I not only, as Buddhism says, participate in the original face of the all, but I'm actually a uniquely original expression of the all that never existed before. I'm a new dimensional expression of all three faces of Eros. And at no point, right, is it ever true that I'm ever unloved. Right? Unlove is an illusion. And what we do when we practice is we actually participate in the very movement of evolution itself, which is the movement towards ever deeper love between, and the spaces in between second person, ever deeper love, aggregating reality, moving reality towards larger, deeper, more intense, more beautiful, more good, more true unions. And ever deeper love literally running through me as I become aware that I'm an irreducible, unique expression of that love intelligence and love beauty as my nature. That's actually who I am. I am, that's the code. I am not just evolution. It's not just that evolution, the third person of reality aggregating to larger wholes lives in me. That's shocking enough. I'm not just living in an evolutionary context. The evolutionary context quite literally lives in me. I am evolution. But I'm evolutionary love. I'm the unique configuration of Eros that never was, is, or will be ever again. And when I practice, when I do, not spiritual practice, I don't like the word spiritual. We're doing practices of the real. These are sanity practices. These are enlightenment practices. And enlightenment is sanity. That's all enlightenment means. Enlightenment is not, my friend Elena, right? Enlightenment is not an esoteric luxury of the elite or of the avatars or of, right? No, not at all. Enlightenment is sanity. And sanity is to know my true identity. It's to know who I am. It's to know where I am. And it's to know what's there to do. What does reality need from me? And what do I need from reality? Enlightenment is not clarity. Enlightenment is sanity. Right now, it gives clarity. Yes, as Robin says, enlightenment clarifies the nature of reality. At its core, right? 3 words, enlightenment is sanity. Okay? That means you understand how that changes everything? What that means is we can't rely on the elite to be enlightened. We have to stand for the democratization of enlightenment. And the democratization of enlightenment is the democratization of great love. Does everyone understand that? Right? And great love is not for the avatars and the saints and the whirling dervishes and the great lovers. right? My nature is to be a great lover. Great love moves through me. That's the nature of enlightenment. It's to realize that this love in first, second, and third person is actually moving through me. Love's not hard to find. Love's impossible to avoid, right? So let's feel into this, okay? Let's feel into this. And let's understand, right? Who am I? I'm a great lover. Okay, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. So, in the great lineage understandings, we talk about involution and evolution. And involution means, in some sense, that reality throws itself out into the lower and lower, the denser and denser realms of reality. And each of these realms of reality are the real, they're spirit, but they're in Leela, they're playfully more ignorant versions of spirit. So spirit descends into soul, and soul descends into mind, and mind contracts into body. And then body, right, the biosphere body, the biological living body, then condenses and contracts into matter. But matter is but disguised love. Does everyone get that? Matter is but disguised love. Matter is but desire in disguise, which is why matter then explodes at the singularity of the Big Bang, and matter blows reality into existence, right? The Big Bang, right, is the moment in which the singularity, the material universe, blows into existence, and then begins, matter reaches for the divine. Reality moves and self-actualizes matter. Mathematical laws, configurations of intimacy. Eros, exponentialized in the first moments, the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang, then self-organizes, self-actualizes back to source. But in that evolution, right? So there's an involution in which spirit condenses itself to a point, and then there's an explosion in which spirit unfolds and evolves back to source. But in that evolution back to source, friends, and here's where it's beautiful and it's dramatic and it's stunning and it's unimaginable, spirit becomes more. And if you didn't just faint, then those words didn't make any sense to you. You didn't get it. And it means I didn't say it clearly, so I apologize. And it's impossible to say. Spirit becomes more by actually emptying itself out into the singularity of matter and then going through the entire process of evolution. Spirit, when we return, when evolution returns back to source, it's more than it ever was before. Just think about it. The Big Bang happens and several billion years go by as matter self-organizes to ever deeper and wider complexities. And then at some point, the first life emerges, right? The first life forms, and then several more billion years go by, and then higher life emerges. And then millions of years after that, human beings emerge walking on the savannah. And in each of these cases, in each of these expressions, we're getting to higher and deeper levels of consciousness, of realization. We increase the number of perspectives we're able to take, and we're going to talk about what that means. And we increase our capacity for eros, for care, for radical aliveness, for pleasure, for eros, for compassion. So let's go deep, friends, okay? Let's go so deep into this. This is so deep. This is so deep. It's so beautiful. We need to remember who we are, right? Hope is the place where the memory of our past informs the memory of our future. Does that make sense, everyone? Hope is the place where the memory of our past informs the memory of our future. And we know that when divinity self-contracts, empties herself into matter, there's a kind of deliberate divine amnesia, right? The play of divine forgetfulness. We forget who we are. And then evolution is the place of remembering. The entire process of evolution, open your hearts, friends. Let's open our hearts like we never have before to actually feel the interior structure of cosmos. Evolution is the place in which the memories are recovered, right? There's two kinds of knowledge. There's knowledge that comes from experiment. We experiment and learn something new. And there's a second kind of knowledge which comes from the recovery of memory. And it's this knowledge in which we recover memory. We recover the memory of who we are. We remember that we've forgotten. You see, it's okay, friends, to forget. Do you get that, everybody? It's okay to forget. But we begin to get clarity, right, Robin? We begin to get clarity when we remember that we've forgotten. See, it's okay to forget, my friends, right? But what happens when we forget that we've forgotten? When we forget that we've forgotten, then we can't remember. And so we have to forget that we've forgotten, and then we begin to remember. And recovery of memory, when we recover memory, right, that's when we become whole. And the entire story of evolution is recovering the memory of the Eros that animates and suffuses the entire process, the entire story. So reality has direction. Reality is not random. Right? My friend Perry Marshall has written a very good essay. And Zoe, you and I have looked at it on the absurd presentations of randomness. Reality is not random. Reality has inherent direction, not a caricatured, homophobic, anti-body, ethnocentric God imposing order on a dead, inert cosmos demanding obedience. No, there's inherent Eros. Reality is filled with Eros, and that Eros has telos. And my dear, beloved evolutionary partner, Barbara, used to talk about this as a telerotic universe. So Barbara, we're talking about it now. Reality has telos and Eros. And that's why reality is actually, as Whitehead said, it's the movement towards God by the persuasion of love. Reality is the movement towards realization, towards the recovery of memory. But what moves us to the recovery of memory? And in the recovery of memory, we remember that it's all animated by Eros. That actually, love's not hard to find, love's impossible to avoid. But what moves us towards that? What moves us to the recovery of Eros? Eros itself. Right? Reality is the movement towards God by the gentle persuasion of love. Right? In other words, the drive of reality towards self-organization and self-transcendence, right, is animated by the Eros that moves it. And that's why reality moves from bacteria to Bach, from, oh my God, from slime to Shakespeare, from mud to Mozart, from quarks to culture. Because the self-organizing process, right, is animated not by natural selection. Natural selection is a selection mechanism. And if you read biology carefully today, people like James Shapiro on natural genetic engineering at the University of Chicago, a brilliant geneticist, or the music of life by Dennis Noble at Oxford, right? You actually understand that the old notion of random mutation, natural selection as the driver of evolution is dead at the edge of the sciences. That's a selection mechanism. But what's driving the whole thing? It's the Eros that animates the four forces. And that Eros, my friends, that Eros lives in us. It lives in us, as us, and through us. And it's the evolution of love in the spaces between us, but it's also the evolution of the love, which is the interior of consciousness that lives in the first person. And see if we can grab this, friends, okay? So first person and third person, you with us, friends? First person and third person are two different descriptions of the same reality. First person means what's happening inside of my first person. So atoms have what Whitehead called prehension, which is a kind of proto-awareness. There's a proto-awareness, right, of a dimension of choice, even at the atomic level, right? Wrote the interior sciences, wrote the great mathematician Whitehead. So that's first person, an increased proto-consciousness. And Then it gets more and more. We get to amphibians and life forms with neural nets. And then we get to the paleo mammals with limbic systems and the capacity to form images and symbols. We go to chimpanzees and apes and gorillas, right? With the capacity to form early concepts, right? We get to the humans, right? With the triune brain or some version of a triune brain and the ability to form complex rules and axioms, the capacity, right? Ultimately to awaken to the realization that this entire story is living in me and that I'm actually not separate from source, right? That is the process of the evolution of love in first person. And then there's the evolution of love in third person, right? We get to ever greater systems of interconnectivity, right? Of complexity, of more and more nodes of connection that yield more and more consciousness. And the more complexity there is, the more consciousness there is. That's the law of complexity and consciousness. Never fails. And then we get the evolution of love in the second person, which is the deepening and widening of the love that exists in the spaces between us, right? And my friends, that's the nature of reality. Reality is driven by Eros. Love moves reality to form ever wider identities, ever deeper contact, ever more radical experiences of aliveness. We go from atoms to molecules to cells, right? To organelles, in cells to organisms, right? Right. And what happens at every level, right? Molecules include, they love, they embrace atoms. And in that embrace, the atoms come together and they birth something new, and that's called a molecule. And then molecules, individual molecules are embraced, they're loved by macromolecules, but then something new emerges, this macromolecule, this DNA, for example. And then macromolecules, at some point, they find each other, they're allured to each other. And then they say, oh my God, let's get married. Let's get an apartment. Let's form a union. And a cell is born. And an actual boundary is created. And the cells are wrapped in that boundary. And then life comes into being. And that is the movement of Eros. It's the movement of consciousness reaching and embracing that which seems to be other, that which seems to be alienated, into a single union, right? That's the movement of reality, my friends. That's the movement of reality itself, right? And let's just understand this, okay? And it's so deep, right? So love is present at every stage, my friends. Love is always reaching to create unions. That's what love is always doing. Love doesn't emerge out of matter. Matter is an expression of love, right? In other words, from the very beginning, as the Big Bang blows things into existence, the force of union that creates a new identity, right? That's always Eros and that's always love. And that's the same love that lives in you and lives in me. And here's the point, friends, and this is where I wanted to get to today, okay? And here's the big sentence, and here's where it just kind of blows away. There's absolutely no difference between the cosmic and the personal. The cosmic love that drives reality all the way down, and all the way down, we're always finding, what's there all the way down, right? Is it atoms or neutrons or protons or electrons? Is it quarks? Now it's strings. Whatever spirit's lowest level is, right? Whatever spirit's lowest level is, it's animated by the strong and the weak nuclear and by the electromagnetic and by the gravitational. But all four of those are animated by Eros, right? At all levels, you have the transforming telerotic drive of reality, which is Eros. Love's present from the beginning, right? It's inseparable and suffuses the forces that move this matter around. Because those four forces, they're going to do a lot of things, but they're not going to bring atoms together to create molecules. Atoms are brought together to create molecules by Eros, right? The yearning force of reality, because evolution at its very core is yearning, my friends. So this cosmic force lives personally in me. It's this cosmic force that awakens in human beings. And the human being is animated and blown open by love, which is why I reach out and find you at night. It's why we text each other. It's why we love each other. It's why we make love. It's why we're hurt by each other when we feel unrecognized or unfelt or unneeded or undesired. Because actually what's driving the whole thing is the cosmic love that's personally awake in me. In other words, there's no split between the second person, the first person, and the third person. And it's the second person space of love in between us, in which is evolutionary love yearning for revelation, yearning for deeper intensities, yearning for deeper unions, yearning for deeper mutualities. Love is that which activates us to move out of our alienation, out of our isolation, into our true nature, which is part of the larger whole, uniquely needed by the larger whole, uniquely originally animated by the larger whole. Love not only moves us to become part of a larger union, love moves us to disclose our own irreducible uniqueness, because love is a perception of uniqueness. And when I disclose my uniqueness, that uniqueness itself becomes the currency of connection. It's only love that allows the larger union to take place. And it's love which discloses uniqueness, irreducible uniqueness, that then allows for connection, because it's uniqueness, which is the currency of connection. And uniqueness is not separateness. Separateness is the coin of alienation. Uniqueness is the currency of connection. Wow. And so we begin to understand that the same third person force that is the aggregating movement of cosmos towards ever deeper levels of mutuality, recognition, aliveness, wholeness, embrace, right? That is the same force of love that moves me to say to you and you to say to me, I love you. I love you is the cosmoerotic universe in person, speaking in me, as me, and through me uniquely in a way that she never could before. So I am an expression of more love to come. And if we understand actually that the God field is the field of Eros, then if I'm more love to come, I'm more God to come. And if I haven't clarified, let's get back to clarity. If I haven't clarified the doors of perception, right, until I realize that actually infinity is disclosing itself uniquely in me in a way that she couldn't in any other. Oh my God. What do we say? What do we say on our deathbeds, my friend? We say, oh my God, I wish I would have loved more. That's the only thing we say, right? I wish I would have loved more, right? Right? I am born to participate uniquely in the evolution of love. And that's what it means. Let's see the code, my friends, if we can one more time. Let's see the code. That's what it means to be lived as love. It's okay to forget, my friends. We all forget once in a while. I forget. But we can't forget that we've forgotten. When I forget that we've forgotten, we get lost. Right? So we got to begin. We got to remember that we've forgotten, and that's the beginning of consciousness. And what am I remembering? I'm remembering that that's the cosmic love that underlies and is always present. It's that love that drenches us in every moment. We're showered in that love. We're suffused with that love. The 100 billion cells, the unimaginable, 37.2 trillion cells, right? And then the unimaginable number of molecules that live in us are actually quite literally patterns of intimacy. What do you think a molecule is? It's a pattern of intimacy. We use a word, and the word sometimes defines reality, but then it also alienates us from reality. A molecule, an atom, these are patterns of intimate allurement. That's what an atom is. An atom is a pattern of intimate allurement. I am a pulsating, tumescent, vibrating pattern of intimate allurement, the cosmic uniquely disclosed in me as she, so that I can reach out and kiss thee. That's the purpose of existence. That is why we're alive. We're alive for no other reason, and no one's left out of the circle. No one gets to be left out of the circle. And my friends, our love lists are way too short. They're way too short, right? What's the one thing we'll say at the moment of our passing, right? I want to say it again, right? I wish I could have loved more, right? We need to create a world in which no one is left out of the circle. And we need to articulate it clearly. We need to create great literature, not quick bestsellers. We need to do kind of Darwin, Freud, Da Vinci level work and actually realize that reality is governed by tenets of intimacy and that they work across economics and they work across physics and they work across molecular biology and they work across relational theory and they work across organizational theory and they work across governance, right? Every place. Reality is governed by tenets of intimacy. And part of the intimacy is there's mystery, right? One of the tenets of intimacy is I honor your mystery. We're never going to know everything. We dance between certainty and uncertainty. It's a difference between, right, the radical certainty of homo amor and the regressive certainty of fundamentalism. Part of our certainty is the certainty that there's always going to be mystery, and we bow before the mystery. But we also bow before the suffusion of certainty, what we know. We know that each of us is uniquely lived as love. And that the world that we need to create is a world that quite literally works for everyone. And if one person is left out of the circle, then there is no circle, my friends. Wow. Wow. And no one's a stranger. No one's a stranger. Let's go back to our code. We'll go back to our code. And let's see if we can read it again, right? Oh my God, can we feel that, my friends? Can we feel that? It's like, it's beyond imagination. We're fevered with love. Why should I be fevered by myself? Let's be fevered together, okay? Let's be fevered with love, okay? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. The one love lives in me uniquely. And all paths take us home to the one temple. But what we're saying here, and I want to just feel this as we read the code, what we're saying is completely different than what a fundamentalist message of love would say, which is that love exists within our own ethnocentric context, or what a New Age message of love would say, which talks about love as a force that is independent of the very structure of reality. It's a spiritual force moving through reality. Love is not a spiritual force moving through reality. Love is reality. Love is the one breath. And everything in me moves me towards a union, moves me towards embrace, but not an embrace in which I disappear, but my friends, an embrace in which I appear. It's the embrace in which I disappear in order to appear as my unique, evolutionary, gorgeous, stunning self, as homo amor. All of the sciences are accurate and necessary and need to be honored because they're critical third-person descriptions of reality. But science leaves out, and particularly the dogmas of scientism, engages in a sleight of hand and a kind of politics of the real, which causes a disqualification of the universe, in which first person and second person actually become somehow less real or unreal or merely subjective. That's not the case. Everything in me yearns towards contact, towards aliveness, towards wholeness. Everything in me yearns towards the realization of my unique gift, right? Giving that unique gift into my unique and gorgeous circle of intimacy and influence. If we could just do one code, friends, right? It's about being lived as love. Reality is lined with love. The inside of reality is LoveIntelligence. This is not ordinary love, which usually referred to as love. No, it's rather what we call outrageous love or evolutionary love. Ordinary love is the exile of love to a merely human experience. And that experience often becomes a strategy of the ego for security or status. Ordinary love is generally a passing emotional state, and more often than not, the emotion of infatuation. That's not outrageous love. Outrageous love is what Dante called the love that moves the sun and other stars. Outrageous love is not mere human sentiment of social construction. Outrageous love is the heart of existence itself, and it's my true nature. It's the nature of evolution, uniquely alive in me. And when human beings participate in this larger quality of outrageous love, it's no longer merely a passing emotion. It becomes the center of gravity of my life. I'm lived as love. I'm a radically alive, joy-filled, and purpose-driven life, even if I'm in the midst of tragedy, even if my life's hard, even if I've been injured by the multiple injuries of the world, right? I still am lived as love. To be lived as love is not, and this is critical, is the last sentence. It's not pre-tragic. Doesn't mean I haven't been hit. Doesn't mean I haven't been slammed by life. It's not pre-tragic. And lived by love is not this grasping for love in the middle of the tragic. And I'm going to love and I'm going to ignore and bypass the tragic. No, being lived as love is post-tragic, right? When I step from the tragic into the post-tragic, then I awaken as outrageous love. I realize my identity as an evolutionary lover. When I realize my identity as an evolutionary lover, right? Oh my God, right? I'm an outrageous lover. Then my heart stays open in all circumstances. When I'm crushed, when I break down, I break through. When my heart's broken, my heart breaks open. So let's break open, my friends. Let's break open together. And that's the heart of this revolution, right? Is the reality of a world in which every human being is homo amor and every human being is lived as love. Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you, everyone. We're feverish with love.